Three. You're on. Hold on, hold on.
Good, no good. You count me down? Okay. Welcome to Slow News Day Live. My name is Steve Boykinen. I'm here in beautiful Boulder Creek, California, and I am very pleased this morning to introduce a new friend of the show and someone that I will be collaborating with hopefully a lot here in the future. He resigned in protest from Newsweek magazine because he was trying to write a factual story on the OPCW leaks that has since sparked an incredible amount of ambitious projects, and we're going to discuss them today. Please welcome to the show, Tareq Haddad. Tareq, thank you for being on this morning, man. How you doing?
Thanks for having me on, and yeah, I look forward to working more closely with you as well.
So let's not beat a dead horse too much, but the too long don't read version of how you got here. If you want to just summarize that briefly, and we can stop bringing up old shit.
Yeah. So in December, I was working at Newsweek, and as many people will be aware, there was lots of kind of information coming out that there were some whistleblowers from the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, that they were unhappy that the reports that were put out to the media and to the public were not what they initially found when they visited the scene. So I started to become more and more aware of this. I tried to write about it. As I did so, kind of what is, I guess, a very common, what people expect of the media. I faced a lot of pushback in trying to write that story. As I kind of became more frustrated and more annoyed at the situation, I kind of investigated the editors that I was working with, and then I kind of discovered that there was a lot of corruption going on, and a lot of this was linked to relationships with think tanks and people that have conflict of interests. And so when I kept, trying to push back, I ended up resigning over it because in the end, they didn't let me write the story. So I ended up writing my own story, which I kind of showed all this corruption and discussed some of the issues that were relating to this OPCW story.
And just so we're all clear here in the chat, the initial OPCW report or the initial, I guess, debunking of the OPCW report took place over the summer of 2019 with one initial leak, and it just kind of snowballed after that. Now we've got over 20 people who were part of the fact-finding mission and the process altogether who have come forward to say the report the OPCW leaked is not factually accurate. There were several redactions and omissions, and they, under pressure of the State Department, worked backwards from the State Department's conclusion in order to complete their report.
Yes, in essence, but I think we haven't had that document yet with the 20 names of, but we know that such a document exists, that a memorandum of protest signed by 20 people at the OPCW, allegedly does exist. I'm just kind of wary of, centering the argument about that, because that's the one document we don't have, but we do have plenty of other evidence. And, the two whistleblowers, I think is sufficient to argue this case and the information that they put out.
Absolutely. And you did exactly what you said. You wrote your own story. That's something that I wish more journalists who have had a background in the mainstream, or certainly like still employed in the mainstream, would get fed up enough to do. I can't thank you enough for actually having the backbone to go through and do that. Your story has now evolved into creating the Free Speech Society, which I had no idea didn't exist prior to this. little bit shocked on that end. But please, man, while we're here, let's look to the future, and let's talk about what's going on with that and the projects that are coming up, including the extradition hearing of Julian Assange. It's going to take place starting February 24th, with another round in May.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean, I was also kind of, when I first started to have the idea, I was like, surely the Freedom of Speech Society already exists. And, I looked it up and I tried to find, and there was nothing that existed along those lines. And I think probably part of the reason it's never existed is that it's such a broad term that it can seem like a very challenging thing to address. And, why should one organization be the authority on freedom of speech when there's plenty of others? And I completely understand that, but I guess I was just I wanted to make a solution to the problems that I saw that was effective and as wide ranging as possible. And it's a good name, so so why not? I want to. I see some really serious things going on that I think need to be addressed really quickly. Otherwise, we're going to be in kind of a worse situation than we are already in. And like, if you follow these things, as I'm sure you do, the threats to freedom of speech have already been pretty bad for the last 10, 15 years. And it only seems like they're getting worse. There are lots of positive things that are like happening to combat them, WikiLeaks, the Courage Foundation, Freedom the Press Foundation, the EFF. There's groups that are doing this, and there's people that are doing kind of technological solutions, which I think is one of the main kind of tools that we have at the moment to combat these issues. And I guess I just kind of wanted to contribute to that effort in a way that I think will make real change in the media landscape. And so I think that's the biggest issue at the moment, is that the majority of the mainstream media has kind of completely abdicated its role of telling us the news. And that's not a good position to be in. It might be an opportunity for some people to to grow alternative media organizations, and that's good, and I welcome that. I don't want to have a situation where we have no respected media. So it would be very hard to transform how the current media operates, but I thought it'd be a much more effective solution is to, why not bring up and introduce standards and quality quality reporting kind of things into alternative media, and bring alternative media to a really high professional level where it can stay independent and it doesn't have all those problems that media tends to have, is that it starts off being independent and becomes more corrupt over time, usually as it grows and has more money. And so, I've thought about these issues for a long time, of how to have a corporation that actually doesn't do that. So, I've not put out all the plans that I have, but I see there's, specific mechanisms that can help an organization stay independent.
Before we get into what those specific mechanisms are, it strikes me as a little bit allegorical that what you said about the inherent corruption of mainstream media, or the way that money will play into coverage and content and whatnot. It seems allegorical to the political process, at least here in the United States, because you can't change mainstream media from the inside. The institution is already there. The mechanisms are already there to make it what it is. It's similar, if not mirroring exactly, the two-party system, which is in fact a one-party war party. And the argument that you can change media from within is, as to me, as silly as a notion that you could change the Democratic Party from within or the Republican Party from within, because it's an inherently corrupt institution. And when things are designed to benefit only a certain amount of people, no matter how much money you throw at it or I throw at it, or no matter how much we believe in one journalist or one candidate, if they're inside that sphere, they're going to become consumed by that sphere, and their choice is either to leave and start a new organization, as you've done, or to embrace the corruption and be a part of it.
I agree. Yeah, the only thing I'd say to that is that I don't think these systems are designed to be this way. Maybe we disagree on that, but I think that's the end result. I think we kind of got to the stage that we are without knowing. Like they kind of evolved into becoming the things that they are now. I don't think someone 100 years ago kind of said, "Okay, I want the media to be ineffective because of it relies on money to cover its things." I think that was just kind of a byproduct of it. But I think you're absolutely right that like it's very difficult to change the way it operates now because that's the way it's established. So we need to do something different about it for sure.
And there's something different. Sorry, I just had a back here in I'm at my house today. I'm like back in our office area. It's partially connected to the main house, so there's occasional slamming and whatnot going on because my 7-year-old is fucking crazy. Um, and I guess I agree. I know that journalism wasn't necessarily designed to only benefit a handful of people, and that these journalistic institutions may have started with noble intentions. I don't for a fucking second believe that the Democratic Party was designed with any sort of noble institutions. It's the oldest capitalist party in the United States. It's responsible for some of the most racist shit that has happened throughout the course of American history. And no matter how much they try to whitewash the fact that the Democratic Party started the Ku Klux Klan, and then those Democrats turned into Dixiecrats and Republicans, it's still the same core organization in terms of legislating on behalf of the 1%, as it were. And I don't think that any one particular candidate can change that kind of machinery. Let's talk a little bit about Freedom of the Press Society goals and the sort of mechanisms that exist to help that along.
Yeah, so just to be Freedom of Speech Society, just not to get it's okay, just not to get confused with.
I've got like 4 hours of sleep right now.
No, it's all good. Just so that people don't get confused with Edward Snowden's campaign. So obviously, it's a very, like I said, it's a very ambitious and big title, which it seems like it's too much for one person to do. But I think I want to make clear is that this is kind of going to be an overarching structure, and I want to have kind of like structures underneath that. So that will have certain goals, but then I sort of other companies independent of that, which will try and kind of tackle some of these issues on a smaller, kind of more direct level. And so, kind of like one of the ideas is to have an independent media company that will kind of live by the principles that the Freedom of Speech Society kind of puts out as what things people should be, like what principles should be adhered to. And most of these things already exist in one form or another. It's not like we have to reinvent the wheel. There's things that are that have been out there in terms of laying out the ethics of journalism and how to keep publications independent, and these things exist. It's just sometimes they're not followed. But in one of the other things I wanted to do is try and kind of have bring more transparency to the media. So we should know who owns every single company and where their sources of finance are coming from. And we should know about journalists in terms of if they have a conflict of interest. So
is this a subtle dig at Elliot Higgins? Because I kind of feel or Ian Higgins, whatever his Owen, I can't remember his
Elliot, yeah.
The Bellingcat shill, because I'm not accusing you of that, but that's where my head went, given he's been one of their most prolific stenographers.
Mm-hmm. Well, he's the founder of the organization. So I don't think he founded himself, to be honest. But
No, that was the National Endowment for Democracy, which is one of the most Orwellian doublespeak uh, acronym agencies that we could possibly have in here. Um, yeah, I'm serious with the Freedom of Speech Society. I'm honestly genuinely weirded out that like that organization doesn't already exist and was founded by Henry Kissinger. This is kind of a little ancillary, but there's a supposedly like left-leaning think tank called the Truman Project that was founded by Henry Kissinger and a couple other insanely murderous right-wing demons. And one of their fellows is good old CIA Pete Buttigieg, who really walked in to Iowa like he was Juan Guaido and was like, yeah, with 1.7%, I am the winner. And for our media to justify reporting on a victory with 1.7% of the results in, it's almost like, and in reality is, exactly what state television would do in any of the countries that us in the Five Eyes world throw stones at all the time.
Exactly, yeah, and it's very easy to like laugh about this situation and or kind of say how ridiculous it is, but I think people don't understand how like troubling of a sign like the whole Iowa thing was. It's like it's kind of just American democracy sort of dying in front of your eyes, and I think it needs to be investigated properly. It's obviously a very difficult thing to do because how do you kind of anything that how can President Donald Trump say that we're going to look into this DNC corruption, because it would obviously very quickly be spun to be a political effort, that it's kind of he's just trying to attack the Democrats or whatever. But I think these problems are huge in terms of it seems very clear that the Democrats and the intelligence community are just kind of in complete lockstep with each other. And it's so dangerous that their interests seem to be 100% aligned right now, and they're working together and they're doing it to subvert American democracy.
Yeah, I know it's definitely a subversion of the intention of democracy. It's a complete mockery of the idea of a representative republic. But what it is more than anything is a public show of force by the national security state, or at least in my mind, because we're in a situation, especially in the Five Eyes countries, where we don't have governments that run intelligence agencies. We have intelligence agencies that run governments. And until we decouple our societies from that dynamic, we're going to be forever trying to catch up and forever trying to find ways to work around the system instead of through through the machinery that already exists. When we can take from working examples of how their organizational structure is successful, but there's a fine line between using a successful template and becoming the organization that you're trying to oppose. And I see that a lot with independent content creators who have ostensibly taken their channel and turned it into a nonstop campaign commercial for their pet politician. I just want to fucking shake them every now and then, like, dude, in the same breath, you're telling people it's a rigged system, but you got to throw your time, money, and energy into someone trying to become a part of that system who has admitted they're working willingly within that system. It's maddening, but the clicks and the money is getting people to believe in the horse race.
Mm-hmm.
It just got super windy here. That's neat.
Yeah.
I honestly hope PG&E doesn't decide it's windy enough to cut the power, which has happened before. Who was I on with? I was on with Jason Burmis, and it was like super windy and super rainy, and the power went out just long enough for both of us to get involved with other things. Like I know that this isn't the show to discuss weather manipulation. But I'm just kidding. There is a Lockheed Martin facility like right up the road though. So let's got a little bit
It's all good. Well, maybe I'll ask you a quick question. We'll flip it around. I mean, so what do you see as kind of like a possible solution of this, like the coupling of the intelligence community and the politicians?
I believe that Suzy Dawson is on the right track with her 1 versus 5i campaign. And that's taking the fight directly to these intelligence agencies. I think that has the potential to become a global awareness campaign, or at least definitely an awareness campaign within the Five Eyes countries. But if you've watched her teach-ins at all, you know it's not limited to that. There's up to like 49 eyes or some ridiculous. It's about the same number of nations that recognize Juan Guaido as the legitimate president of Venezuela. But I think that because it sounds relatively conspiracy theory-ish to say, you know, there's an information sharing network of straight up spooks who have more to do with the legislation that passes through the halls of Congress than the actual Congress critters. Like that sounds like a lot to process at first, but the more that you research it and the more that you look into it, you find that that's true. So I think a hard-hitting, visually appealing, fact-based education campaign like those 1 versus 5i teach-ins is really important. And I think that's something that we as content creators need to take to a next level and go to universities to hold, you know, live and also live streamed events, town hall-esque atmosphere. I think we need to model the politics in the pub that Sydney, Australia puts on every week, and go to, you know, bars, public houses, whatever, and hold similar style events. Outside of that, we all need to keep doing what we're doing and what you're doing, which is just hammer home the truth of this matter to anyone who will fucking listen, and not sink into complete cynicism, not spend all your time looking for enemies within your own organization, and have the forethought to take a step back and do a mental inventory check on what's going on with you, because you can't be a successful activist. This is something that Suzy has mentioned as well, without giving yourself a mental health break. You know,
it's really important. Yeah, and I think probably a lot of people, and I kind of went through it too, even though I don't think of myself as an activist, but I know that when you think about these issues on a daily basis, it can get very depressing and you feel like you're never going to make any headway against any of it. But I think,
crack some fucking mini jokes on the Free Assange vigils. I'm just gotta like, Nico House says, "Find your balance." It's a good truism. But yeah, I really think it's important to mix levity with what we're doing.
Yeah, for sure. And despite the negative things going on, there are also positive things in the other direction. So it's kind of good to kind of keep a level keel of the whole situation, not just think that the whole world is going to shit.
No, I agree. all of my doors just blew open from the wind, so I'm going to ask Josh, our rockstar tech guy, to put it on full screen for you, Tareq. And I would like to, I'd like you to hear, I'd like the audience to hear kind of what you have planned for the first week of the Assange extradition hearings while I go fix this shit.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Cool. Yeah. So, I mean, one of the things I wanted to do is make sure that the Assange hearings were covered properly and in a professional way. So, that includes broadcasts from outside Woolwich Crown Court or Belmarsh Prison. And I would like to be doing court reporting. So, through a company that will be called the Watchdog. I'm going to try and working with Steve and the Justice for Assange people and others that want to get involved. Just instead of kind of lots of different independent media trying to cover the event, in various levels of success, it's kind of, I want to just bring a group of people together and, hopefully we can all achieve the same thing, but just be able to achieve a bit more as a collective. And hopefully that's what we can do.
I think it's vital that collectives of this nature, whether it's Watchdog or other, I guess, sections of independent media who maybe aren't a part of this initial organization, but already have the existing platform, already have the viewership, that they collectivize, if that's even a freaking word, along with it, because we can't do this by ourselves. And when we start feeling like it's just us, that isolation sort of determines our next several steps. So it's vital to me that these kind of collectives emerge, exist, thrive, and that it's going to be hard, but that we sort of put ego aside in order to bolster each other.
And
Because
I think,
go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say that I think that's like an important thing to note is that, I know that I'm going to try and be working with lots of different organizations and lots of different alternative media companies. And I think it's important to remember that, like, just because we're all working together doesn't mean we all have to agree on every single specific, even just me and you, I'm sure there's things that we disagree about politically or whatever, but I think it's, all being able to work together to say, okay, you might be from Breitbart, I might be from whatever the most left-wing equivalent is or whatever, and just to say that's fine, but we're all interested in the press being as high quality as possible and like making sure that our integrity is there. And it's also getting back to that idea, which kind of doesn't really exist very much in America, is that you can be of a different political persuasion and not be a fascist or an idiot or a piece of shit. And so it's kind of encouraging that actually no, like we need to have strong media that's left and right, and our interests align for bigger things, and freedom of speech should be something that we can all get behind, doesn't matter what our politics is.
I
yeah,
wholeheartedly. The thing that you're talking about in terms of Americans not being able or willing to have a conversation or agree that there's common ground with someone of a different political stripe, that's what I call manufactured confusion. That's what our media's role has become since the manufactured consent worked. And it's division for the sake of division. It's 100% 24 hours a day, 7 day a week saturation of different ways to present the exact same ideology in order to get people to fight about that. Like the centrist Democrats and the QAnon right wingers both agree that we should go to war in Iran. They both agree that deregulation is a good thing. They both agree. Well, shit, they passed 82% of Trump's agenda. There's a lot of commonality there, but they've been propagandized to the point to where they're going to fight with everyone. The only time the far right and the middle agree on something is when it's war or kicking around a quote unquote socialist. Um, and it's I guess it's our job to get past the gatekeepers of independent media who say that if you want to have someone with a different political ideology on your show, then you're platforming their entire thought process and you're a bad person and we shouldn't work with you.
Yeah.
And that's like straight up gatekeeping behavior to me. I'm not, even if they believe it 100%, that if I have Cassandra Fairbanks on my show, or if I have Jared Beck on my show, then I'm platforming everything they've ever said or done, and I must agree with it, and my audience must agree with it. That's not the case. I want to have conversations that people aren't having. I want to be able to discuss. I want people to be able to discuss what's going on right in front of their eyes that they're being told isn't happening. And as my friend Sam Tripoli says all the time, it's we have more in common than we do different. Jason Burma says it's not about right and left, it's about right and wrong. And I think that we talked about this off camera. The energy that exists from the WTO protests and Occupy is coming back. There's a reemergence of that. And I think that's why the focus on gatekeeping and not platforming people with different ideologies is hitting so hard, because people are aware of this energy. People are aware that we're starting to drop political ideology to focus on something larger like free speech, and it scares the shit out of them.
And I guess that's why it's I guess another important thing. You probably know a lot more about the WTO protests than I do, because it was a little bit before my time. I think I was about 4 years old. But I mean, I guess like the general feeling from Occupy was that it kind of didn't have a solidified set of goals or a movement, which I'm a lefty, and I think that's not a controversial thing to say, that it kind of didn't have it didn't really know what it wanted to achieve, and obviously
Intentionally rudderless.
and I think they can't be completely blamed for that, just because the whole situation was just a big mess, and most people didn't even understand what was going on. People were just angry, right? And I think we're probably going to be in a similar position where a lot of people are going to be angry, and they also don't know what the actual solutions should be. But I think that's where we can step in to say, okay, we have an idea of how to improve the media, and there's steps that we can take to do that, and and then we can also lead the example of being, doing media that's full of integrity and is honest and is transparent and is rigorous. And it's just because the media isn't doing their job anymore, that just creates an opportunity for us, right, to create more effective types of media.
We do have such a wide lane that we can operate in because of the abject failure of corporate media. I was talking to my sister a lot last night, and when we finally got through her shit, she was like, yeah, I live in this particular part of Indiana. She's been a conservative, very conservative Republican her entire life, and she's like, they think I'm a bleeding heart liberal here because I don't believe climate change is caused by two dudes kissing. Like straight up, that's the mentality. And she's like, even our politicians, they say they're Democrats, but they're for all of the things that Donald Trump is for, and they have to be in order to get elected. They just mentioned some stuff about gay rights. She's like, I don't even watch our news anymore. I watch the BBC. And I'm like, well, about that. I know 90 to 95% of American media is corporate owned. And I saw a stat that I'm not entirely sure if it's accurate. Maybe you can help me with this, but it's over 80% of British media is privately, corporately owned. Am I right about that?
I can't tell you a
I'm gonna have to
specific.
call her back.
I don't know about a specific statistic, but the BBC and Channel 4, which is also a big broadcaster, are publicly owned. I think Channel 4 is a little bit different. Yeah, I think other than that, everything is privately owned. And that's one thing that the Freedom of Speech Society is going to do. So it's going to it's a type of company in terms of it still tries to be profitable, but it's different because it's classified as a community interest company. So in its actual like laws and procedures, and its it has to put out things to the regulator. It has in its procedures, that it aims to make a profit, but there is protections to make sure that profit is invested back into the company, and you have to show on a yearly basis that you're doing what you're saying you're doing. So obviously, I want to get it to a stage where it's profitable and it can pay people for the hard work that they're doing. But all the money that would be raised, instead of going to some business owner that runs the media company, it will be invested back in the business, and it will be invested back in initiatives that help media in the kind of developing landscape. I think I've lost your voice.
Sorry, I was muted there. Once again, I'm going to pitch the idea of like public teach-ins or public town halls, or just bringing the media independent media into more public spaces. I love what Jimmy Dore does with his live show, because his live show is basically a 2 or 3 hour political rally for critical thinkers and people who want an independent or third party or second party option in the United States. And it's a great way to galvanize people. And when you leave a show like that, you want to talk about it. You want to talk to your friends about it. You want to be, kind of an ambassador for truth once you get exposed to it. And I do believe that with initiatives like Watchdog and like Free Speech Society, there's an avenue for genuine change to start taking place, because I don't personally have the notion that I'm going to be able to change everything, but I am a gardener. And planting seeds is a very big thing to me. Whether or not I eat what I grew or I smoke what I grew, somebody will. And if I can encourage them to then do the same thing, I feel like job well done on my part.
Yeah, and that's I think that's a beautiful mentality to have. Of we all could just do what we can, and I think I've said this before. Like I think on the Assange vigil, I was saying I think the solution to this is at a personal level. It's kind of each of us individually deciding to be more truthful about ourselves, and then the things that are going on in society, and then it's when those things start to happen that we'll start seeing more collective change. And I kind of had that, and the reason I say that is that I had that experience before I resigned at Newsweek. I was kind of not very happy with certain things in my life, and family situation and relationships and lots of things kind of going badly. And then I didn't want to resign from Newsweek, but everything sort of happened when I kind of made a very conscious decision of, okay, I need to start being more honest about everything. And that's the only way that I can like truly start to be happy. And it was just when I kind of was put in that situation of being forced to lie about something that I knew was true, that's what, because I had already started telling the truth with my family more. I started telling the truth just with my friends about, just really basic things that you'd sometimes keep hidden or just you wouldn't really express. But it's just having that mentality of like, no, with every single person I interact with, I'm going to be 100% honest. And I think because in the past, I also had this problem of trying to please everyone. I wouldn't say what I really felt because I wanted to not come off as rude or, too pushy or something. And I've always had an issue of kind of saying what I really think. So it was only kind of when I started to say, no, I need to just treat everyone like it doesn't matter if the truth is a painful thing. I just need to say it, and the end result will be better. And that's why when the situation happened at Newsweek, I was kind of, I'd already started seeing the benefits of being more truthful in my own life. And it was just, I didn't think it would blow up to be this big thing. I just thought, no, for my personal well-being, like, and, I need to tell the truth. And now my life is much, much happier than it was that week and a half when I was, essentially being bullied to shut up about a story. I've got more work to do now, but the work is exciting and it gives me purpose to like wake up and obviously there's a lot of negative things going on, but like from a personal perspective, I think I'm raring to go to kind of to tackle some of these issues. So
Oh, yeah. I don't know if anyone has officially welcomed you to the heavily ostracized underground, but thanks for being here, brother. We're
yeah,
glad to have you.
I've, I've I've been in the underground for a very long time. I just never really sort of said anything. I've followed these things for a while, but I just have been one of the unknown many. But but thanks for the welcome anyway.
I've said this before a couple of times on the show, but like I've always had a negative visceral reaction to authority in general, no matter where it's coming from. And I owe a lot of that to Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell in the 90s radio show that he would have on anyone to talk about just far out shit. And he would treat all of the guests like their point was like their point or their project or their subject was legitimate. And he would ask very just routine questions and just treat these people with the utmost respect. And that in a combination of clean LSD and a few people who were older in my life who were like, yo kid, get in the van, we're gonna go to Grateful Dead show in Alpine Valley, Wisconsin, and you're gonna tell your parents that you're going camping for spring break, and that's gonna fly. That kind of put me outside to begin with. So going to the WTO and getting my head bashed in by the police for the first time, it just seemed like a natural thing rather than something that like, oh, I'm taking a weird big step. Most of my jobs have been outside of the regular sphere of employment. I worked for Renaissance festivals for 5 years, traveled all around the country, lived in tents, trailers, vans, upstairs and booths, and basically worked weekends and had the rest of the week off, which is a complete opposite. And then when I got into journalism, really started writing, I was fired, blacklisted, and had all of my work scrubbed from the internet in 2008 during the primary for writing an article about Barack Obama called Barack Obama Reagan with a Tan, because I had really spent a lot of time on the trail listening to what he had to say and listening to what he said outside of the stump speech, and it scared the shit out of me, Tareq. It really did, because I saw how he was being marketed and I saw the cult of personality form up around him. And when I tried to essentially shine a little bit light on it, the reaction from the nation at the time, Chris Hayes was the politics editor. He was my boss.
Mhm.
The reaction from that was so brutal that I sort of dropped out for about 3 years,
Mhm.
just completely shut down and was like, "Holy fuck, my whole life's work is gone." But it
Mhm.
did remotivate me after the fact, eventually, and now I'm at the point where, I'm a dedicated activist first, and then journalist or reporter or whatever second.
Mhm.
Uh, and that's, probably more about me than anybody wanted to know, but,
No, I think that's super interesting. I didn't know that you had a background in, like, writing as well. I just thought you did broadcast, so that's really cool to hear.
yeah, I
A
should I
lot of
should actually start writing a little bit more. I did a lot of, like, volunteer work here locally for our newspaper, and I specifically was covering things, related to the cannabis legalization issue
mhm,
happened in 2016 in California, because I do live in one of the more prolific growing areas, and it's you can't throw a rock without finding somebody in the industry here. Uh,
mhm,
but as we move into this phase in this period in the biggest press freedom trial that has ever happened in our lifetimes.
mhm,
Um, I think the period between March 1st and May 18th, when the second round of the extradition hearing begins, is going to be so goddamn critical for free press society, for action for
mhm,
Assange, for independent media in general. And that's where those collectives have the opportunity to form and grow and build.
mhm.
And I would yeah, I'd like to hear your thoughts on what we can do on the media front, on the activist front, and in journalism specifically during that time.
Mm. Um, I don't know if I've got anything too revelatory that's gonna be more life-changing, but, I think, everyone need just, I guess, keep doing what they're doing. I mean, the different movements already seem to be growing and doing really well, like the Justice for Assange and don't extradite Assange campaign. All these things are growing. Um, and yeah, I think I'm going to try and help with some of these media issues, and I think a lot of things can be done outside of our sphere of control. But yeah, I think you're right that those 3 months are going to be critical. Yeah, I don't know.
That's where I think that trying to organize live events, live teach-ins,
Hmm.
broadcasting it while we're doing it. I want to start holding live action for Assange events
That's
when we do
interesting.
our Wednesday show because it's only 7 o'clock in the evening here when we kick off.
Hmm.
And and that's pretty and we're also thinking about starting a little bit earlier to hit more, I guess, prime time uh
Hmm.
air slot, the
Yeah.
airing broadcast slot, whatever you want to call it.
Hmm.
Um, but I think that that the necessity to get off the internet, as it were, like we can still live stream, but take this into the physical three-dimensional public sphere while we're doing it at the same time in an online sphere is a critical step. And
Hmm.
I would encourage uh, you and everybody that you're working with in the UK right now and
Hmm.
in Europe in general, because I know there's other um, other journalists that you've been talking
Hmm.
uh, to do that.
Hmm.
Um, I'd like to hear your thoughts a little bit about that, and then I would love for you to talk about your show and the people that you've been able to interview. And I'm
Hmm.
probably going to wrap this in the next 10 or 15 minutes because we all have a call that
Yeah.
we have to get on shortly after that. So I'd like
Hmm.
to give it some downtime
Yeah.
to, do whatever.
No, I think you're absolutely right about like doing things in the physical realm. I think that's so important for a few reasons, but I think having people in the same room is obviously such a beneficial thing of just you all will build a connection together and a bond of kind of going to that event together and hearing the same things and exchanging ideas with everyone. So I think that will have a much bigger influence than people think of you know having that physical bond with people. And then it's also just a great way of making relationships. It's I'm very thankful to all the activism and efforts that are going on online, but I'm sure people's relationships will improve if they're attending these types of events. And there's always good question and answer sessions and things like that. um, and then you asked, about some of the guests that I've had on, and I guess
Yeah, talk about your show,
Mhm.
because if my audience isn't already subscribed to that channel and
Mhm.
isn't already a part of your Patreon, Josh is going to pull up your Patreon here in a minute. I would like to encourage them to do that.
Thank
So
you.
please let them know what they'll be getting into.
Okay, awesome. I mean, so it was kind of based off of my experience of I decided to write a story or wanted to write a story, and then I kind of paid the price for wanting to do that. And then, it became very clear to me that that's not a unique thing at all in terms of, you're saying it happened to you. And I've heard of, at least 30, 40 different people that have essentially had that same experience of they tried to say something, they tried to report something, or said something that was, not in the prevailing orthodoxy. And they kind of ended up either losing their jobs or being smeared, or in some instances, they're forced into, go be in arbitrary detention for 7 years in the Ecuadorian embassy, or people like Suzy are forced to go seek exile in Russia for the stories that they write. So, so what made kind of stood out to me was that actually all these different people have different stories that we need to know about, because if their voices are trying to be shut down, there's a specific reason for that. So those are the voices we need to be going to try and figure out where the truth is. And like I said, there was like 30 people reached out to me to say, oh, I've gone through a very similar thing, I tried to write about this or whatever, or just from my awareness of it. And I wanted to bring those stories to light in a way that was effective. So what I've just been trying to do is to speak to as many of those people that have essentially paid a price for trying to speak honestly about what's going on. So one of the guests I've had is Suzy Dawson. I would urge everyone to go to protectsuzy.com if they haven't done so already, and sign the open letter. So I'm sure your audience is very aware of Suzy. I also had on Patrick Lawrence. Are you aware of Patrick Lawrence? Or
I am. I'm not. I
Mhm.
haven't been exposed to too much, but
Mhm.
I'm definitely willing to get to know his work better.
Mhm. Well, he wrote the, I guess, very important story in 2017 to say that the DNC or the DNC leaks were not a hack; they were leaked
Yeah.
by an insider. And so he was a contributor at the Nation, and he had worked there for many years. And I used to read the Nation once upon a time. Um,
Yeah, me
and I think it's it used to, I don't know so much now, but it's a publication with a great history, and has done a lot of really great journalism in the past. And he was one of their best writers, in my opinion, and he wrote a very important story. And then he received a lot of pushback from, I guess, the establishment media for just even writing that story. I'm pretty sure the Washington Post wrote a very big attack of the piece. Um, and so again, and he ended up, he's no longer with the Nation, even though he had a long relationship with them. So
You
again,
should
I
join
just
a
felt
cause.
like his this is someone who was a editor at the New York Times for 10 years, and worked at numerous publications and is a very knowledgeable guy, and written 6 books, extremely intelligent and a lot of foresight, and it's someone whose name most people don't know. And instead of this person being one of our most recognized journalists, he's forced to quit his job because he wrote a story that wasn't palatable for people. So I guess all I'm trying to do is just to say, here's XYZ. This is why their opinion should be listened to, and here's what they suffered for trying to explain that opinion, and then just let people decide. You get to see this person as a human being and have them see them having a conversation, and do you think this person is a genocide denier or a Holocaust denier or whatever these people get called when they write these stories? And so it's just kind of showing a human face to the people that have sometimes been dismissed. And I guess another part of it is also trying to have, like we discussed earlier, of having that debate between left and right and being able to do it. Or it doesn't even have to be left and right, people that just disagree on different subjects. So one thing I'd personally like to do in the future as well is to have people that I wouldn't necessarily agree with. So I don't want to keep it purely to journalism. I want to maybe venture out on different things and just have conversations with people. And there's plenty of avenues that can be discussed, and also just kind of a platform to discuss things that I believe are interesting or going on and that people should be aware of. And hopefully it's just another voice in the network of people that are all having these really interesting conversations and stuff.
I would encourage you to look into an organization called MAPS. It is the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. I can't remember Rick's last name right now, but their founder is an incredibly approachable guy, and Zach Leary, Timothy Leary's son, is on the board and heavily involved with them. If you want to have a far out conversation that has very real world implications and benefits, I would love to watch that episode.
Sure. I just finished reading Aldous Huxley, The Island. So I'm sure that would be interesting. And it's not an area that I'm like very knowledgeable on, but it's definitely very interesting. And I know even in London there's very interesting things happening with the psychedelic world and things of that nature.
Yeah, they've been pioneering the effort to get psychedelic medicine recognized, and they've done a number of studies with veterans and PTSD with psilocybin and MDMA and ketamine as therapy, like where you're taking a very small, very controlled dose with a psychiatric professional who has X amount of years of research and experience behind them. And I think that I'm going to go ahead and advocate for microdosing right now in general, especially if you're a content creator or an independent journalist, because it really does work in terms of alleviating the emotional stress that we are all under at pretty much all times. But just to kind of circle back to the whole, like, take a mental health break, take a well check moment, that's vital to people who are doing what we do. But even if you're just tangentially a part of that, and you are one of the people who is, knows too much about the world or has seen too much about the world, it's vital that you don't feel like you're isolated or by yourself or alone. Like, hit me up on Twitter or something like that. We'll fucking chat. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap so that we have a little bit of downtime before our meeting. If you have any final thoughts for the folks at home, please shout it out and let them know where they can find you on all of your social media and journalistic efforts.
Yeah, nothing too much more to add, just other than thank you very much for having me on. And yeah, I appreciate everything that you're doing. And if people want to support the collective effort that we're going to do, and I think that's an important thing to stress, is that, you know, the Freedom of Speech Society is not about me. It's about, you know, trying to make something that's going to benefit all of us. Yeah, if you could support that, that would be great. So that's freedomofspeechsociety.com. So, and yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Tareq. I'm really glad that that you're a part of this, you know, independent media sphere now. I think that you have a lot to bring to the table, and I look forward with working with you in the future. I can't thank you enough. Folks, this has been Slow News Day on a Sunday. Thank you for showing up. We have hit our GoFundMe goal for the Action for Assange events in London and DC. We officially hit. We're going to put a video out thanking everybody later. But if you participated in that, if you donated to that, thank you so much. We love you, and we couldn't do it without you. It has inspired me to actually get to fucking work on my Patreon, which you can find at patreon.com/slownewsday. And that will do it for me. I'm Steve Poikinen. Good luck to us all.